Recently, I watched a movie for my quest that I do over on the Red Leaf Retrocast anime podcast, links in the description. It's a movie that I've never really heard anyone talk about, and it's not because it's all that old either. It just seems to have flown under a lot of people's radar. So because I really enjoyed this movie, I thought I would take this opportunity to talk about it. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm the Anime Top Scholar, and today we're going to be taking a look at the 2014 movie, Giovanni's Island. Giovanni's Island is a movie that was produced by Production IG and was a special movie made to commemorate the 50th anniversary of Japan Association of Music Enterprises. It was directed by Mizuho Nishikubo, who has directed a few different things, but the most notable credit he has, at least to most of us here in the West, is that he was the animation director on Ghost in the Shell from 1995. The movie was released on February 22nd, 2014 and has a length of 1 hour and 42 minutes. It was also the winner of the Platinum Grand Prize during the 2015 Future Film Festival, held in Italy. Giovanni's Island is a historical drama that takes place on the tiny island of Shikotan during the end of World War II. We follow the brothers Junpei and Kanta Seno as their life is changed after the Russians invaded and their island became a part of the Sakhalin Oblast. Now the Japanese and Russians live together on the island, and an unlikely friendship strikes up between the children as they strive to overcome language barriers and the waves of history. The first thing that gripped me with this movie is that it's based on real events. Now, there are a few other anime movies about World War II, but none of them are quite like Giovanni's Island. Because while other war movies tend to focus on the big events like the nuke or the firebombing of Japan, this movie focuses on the fate of the characters that have been caught up in a very interesting conflict between Japan and Russia. Because the island of Shikotan, or Schappenberg, is an island that is administered by the Russian Federation as part of the Yuzhno-Kurilsky district of Sakhalin Oblast, and it is claimed by Japan as part of the Nemuro sub-prefecture of Hokkaido Prefecture. It is one of the islands that the Soviet Union agreed in 1956 to transfer to Japan in the event of a peace treaty between the two countries. But such a treaty has never been concluded. Now, it should be noted that the movie only really shows a fictional take on the fate of the Japanese characters after the Russians invaded, and not really much of the dispute between the two countries, but I felt like this bit of history was important to include nonetheless. The second thing that got to me with this movie was the characters, the most important of which are the two main characters Junpei and Kanta Seno. Junpei is the older brother and Kanta the younger. They are the sons of Tatsuo who work for the local military stationed on the island. They live in a tiny house together with their grandpa Genso, who's a fisherman. But when the Russians invade, they are made to move out of their tiny house and into the stable next door so that the Russians can live in their house. Junpei and Kanta, as well as the rest of their class, also have to move out of their classroom so that the Russian kids can use it. Yet despite all this, and the immediate spite between the Japanese kids and the Russian kids, over time, as they get more used to their situation and start to hang out more at school, the anger between the kids start to settle down. Eventually, Junpei and Kanta also gets to befriend a Russian girl named Tanya, the daughter of a Russian commander, who also happens to be the Russian family that moved into their house. These interactions become key to the first half of the movie, as it's all about how these kids with completely different cultural backgrounds and who speak completely different languages come together and break the barriers that separate them. It's definitely a different take on a war movie, as normally they would treat each other as enemies, and even though they do that at first, the kids still manage to find common ground. The adults' relationship are a bit more strained, as you would imagine, but apart from a few scenes, you don't really get a full view of this. This is mostly due to this movie being from the perspective of the kids, so they aren't really that involved with a lot of the conflict between the Russians and the Japanese. The second half of the movie, things ramp up and the Japanese are forced to leave the island. I'm not gonna get into that in this video, however, because that would be more spoilers and that would kinda defeat the purpose of this video. Another interesting note about this movie is that there's one author, or more specifically one work from this author that is often brought up, and that is Night on the Galactic Railroad by Kenji Miyazawa, who was a poet and author who lived from 1896 to 1993. The Night on the Galactic Railroad novel is often brought up and referenced in this movie. The book itself was very important to Junpei and Kanta's now deceased mother, and their father has them read the book many times. Junpei and Kanta are even named after the characters in this book, who for reference sake are named Giovanni and Campanella. So the names Junpei and Kanta are like Japanese equivalents to those names. Junpei and Kanta also really like trains and like to imagine themselves riding on the Galactic Railroad. It should also be noted that Miyazawa wrote Night on the Galactic Railroad after his beloved sister died in 1922, and he, in sorrow, took a railroad trip to Sakhalin, and that the novel was based on this trip, which is probably why they decided to include it in this movie. The final thing I would like to touch on is some production stuff. The art and animation in this movie are both pretty good. The only thing I would really think could put off some people are the character designs, as they are quite minimalistic and can look a bit goofy and unorthodox. But one thing I really have to give credit to this movie for though, is a specific choice made in regard to voice acting. A key part of this movie is the difference in culture and languages between the characters. We for the most part get to see this through the interaction between Junpei, Kanta, and Tanya. Tanya is obviously Russian, so she speaks Russian all the time, apart from a few attempts at Japanese. Just like how Junpei and Kanta mostly speak Japanese, apart from a few attempts at Russian. So what they did was that they had Tanya be voiced by a real Russian in Polina Ilyushenko. This really helped sell the idea of the language barrier between the characters, and made the conversations feel more genuine and a bit awkward. I really like this choice in voice acting, and even though Tanya's voice actress isn't the strongest actor, I think it was worth it to sell the idea of them not really being able to understand each other perfectly. Like I said in the beginning, I really enjoyed this movie. And I mean really enjoyed this movie. I'm a fan of wartime dramas like this. I watched a few over the course of my movie quest, and while some movies like Barefoot Gen really got to me with its graphic portrayal of the horrors of the nuke, nothing has quite hit me the same way that Giovanni's Island did. The only thing I knew about this movie going in was the scene at the end where all the characters are standing in a ring, dancing. When the movie got to that part, I actually shed a tear, which is not something I have a habit of doing when watching anime. It just struck a very personal nerve for me, and that's probably why I ended up loving it as much as I did. I will say that the movie is not perfect, and that the drama may be a little much for some at times, but I still think more people should give this one a shot. I can honestly say that it's in my top 5 anime movies of all time. So that was Giovanni's Island. Honestly, I didn't even think I was going to be making a video on this movie when I first sat down to watch it, but once I finished it, I knew I had to. Hopefully this made you want to check it out for yourself, cause it definitely needs some more attention. Anyways, I hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, then don't forget to leave a like, and subscribe for more anime related content from the Anime Top Scholar. Also, leave a comment letting me know if you've seen Giovanni's Island or not, and if this made you decide to give it a shot. I'll hopefully be back with another video in 2 weeks time, but I've got some exams going on right now, so it might be a bit late. Anyways, peace.